In this video we're going to talk about Pegasus, perhaps the most famous mythological horse of all. Welcome to Helios Equine Mythology, where we explore the spiritual, the symbolic, and the arcane in this horse culture that we love so much, and how to draw upon these things for our own development and inner strength. So who was Pegasus? We all know the iconic winged horse. So many equine companies call themselves Pegasus, or therapeutic riding places call themselves Pegasus, or horse products call themselves Pegasus. It's existed as a brand almost for millennia. But why? Why this strong pull to the winged horse? What is it about the winged horse that we find so incredibly compelling? Well, first let's look at who Pegasus actually was. Pegasus was the son, one of two sons, of the god Poseidon, who's the god of the sea, who, by the way, is always represented in Greek art by a bull and a horse, and we'll talk about why in a minute, and Medusa. Now, Medusa, we think of her as the Gorgon, the man-killing, human-killing, snake-headed woman, demon that you couldn't look upon. And in order to kill her, because she's apparently going around doing bad things, the hero, the great Greek hero Perseus, uses a mirror and looks at her reflection in the mirror and cuts her head off that way. Or in another version, he has a shield that's polished so bright that she kills herself. Some people say by turning to stone, but in the mythology where she births Pegasus, it's when he cuts off her head, and it's the blood pouring forth that births Pegasus and his brother. So what's interesting as an allegory is, from the get-go, Pegasus is an idea. It's like he exists in Medusa's head and comes forth from that rather than from her reproductive organs. Briefly, Pegasus' birth, Pegasus' parentage was unfair in the extreme. Why? Because Medusa was actually, according to many myths, a very beautiful maiden. She was not born a snake-headed demoness at all. And the god Poseidon violated her in the temple of Athena. And Athena, rather than backing up her sister, well, her fellow human, her fellow female human, punished Medusa unfairly for this. And it was Athena's curse that created Medusa as the snake-headed demoness who had to go live in isolation, and who, if any man looked upon, they would die. So if that isn't unfair, I don't know what is. So it's interesting that out of the blood of poor Medusa comes this incredible being that seems to bring inspiration to so many. Now, quick backtrack. Poseidon. Why is Poseidon represented by the bull and the horse? Well, he's the god of the sea, and in the Mediterranean area, sometimes volcanoes erupt, and sometimes islands blow up, like the island of Santorini, and sometimes tsunamis happen, which, like the one that wiped out, because of the explosion of Santorini, the Minoan culture on Crete. So whether it's people living in the areas of around Mount Etna or Mount Vesuvius, or whether it's people worried about earthquakes in Greece, in Italy, there's this idea that you have to appease this god, who's represented by the bull, the rumbling, snorting, pawing at the ground of the earthquake, and then the tsunamis, the tossing of the waves, that's the horses. And there's a connection here with bullfighting that we will go into in a later video. So this idea that you have to appease Poseidon, because you never know when he's going to blow up and wipe out your island or your city, is deeply, deeply rooted in Greek and, in fact, all Mediterranean mythology. So the fact that he behaves so unfairly and so badly is perhaps an allegory for this idea that the earthquakes, tsunamis and volcanoes seem to just happen out of the blue. Whatever the case, when poor old Medusa's head is cut off, out pops Pegasus. And Pegasus is also associated with water, with inspiration, and with lightning and thunder. In fact, what does Pegasus mean? It's so interesting how often we use these words, and we never quite know what the origin is. But there are two schools of thought. One is that it means a spring or a well, from the old Greek there. The other one is that it has a meaning for lightning or thunderbolts. And indeed, what happens is that Zeus is so enamored of this incredible, iconic winged horse that he employs him, brings him up to Olympus and sort of puts him in the royal stable and gives him the job of carrying thunderbolts to Earth. So far, so good, except for poor Medusa. There is a monster called the Chimera, a goat, lion, snake hybrid that is living somewhere, different mythologies say in North Africa, some people say parts of Anatolia, Turkey, that is terrorizing the countryside, wiping out cattle. And one can't help but wonder if this was maybe an interpretation of some kind of cattle sickness or livestock sickness that would occasionally go through these areas and ravage and bring people to poverty, etc. So a hero, another hero in the long list of Greek heroes appears. He's called Bellerophon, and we can go into Bellerophon's origins in another video. But suffice to say that Bellerophon feels that he could, with Pegasus's help, kill the Chimera. And for this he gets help from, guess who? Poseidon and Athena, the very people who helped to birth Pegasus. Because Pegasus isn't going to just let anyone on his back. So Bellerophon, with Athena and Poseidon's help, tames Pegasus. And together they take on the Chimera. And they kill the Chimera by ascending far up into the sky, where Bellerophon, with an arrow, manages to slay the Chimera. Now, there is a thing to watch here. Why an arrow? Because here's the thing. The Greeks were not mounted archers. I repeat, they were not mounted archers. Where do mounted archers come from? They come from the steppe regions from Ukraine, Hungary, Ukraine, over into Kazakhstan, Russia, Mongolia. Those are what the Greeks called Scythia, where the Amazons lived. We're going to do several videos on the Amazons as part of this series. So this raises a question. Does Pegasus actually have an earlier origin? Is he in fact birthed in the human mind out on the steppes of Eurasia? Because remember that the Greeks quite early were sailing around and colonizing all over the Mediterranean and up into the Black Sea. And southern Ukraine and Russia, of course, come down to the Black Sea. So these steppe horse cultures with the mounted archers were there. I suspect, I would posit, I would suggest that the contact between these Greek trading ports up in southern Ukraine brought them, we know, into contact with the horse people there. And I suspect that they adopted the winged horse from these people. And at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you why. All right, so the Chimera is killed. Bellerophon and Pegasus go on to many adventures together, slaying monsters, making the world a better place. But Bellerophon gets a little proud. And eventually he decides that he should be a god, like all the others, and go up to Olympus and take his seat. And of course, this does not go over well with Zeus at all. As they are approaching Olympus, Zeus sends either a thunderbolt or, in another version, a gadfly, a biting fly, and whatever happens, Pegasus says, ouch, gives a mighty buck, and Bellerophon falls to his death. Too proud. The human ego, when it gets inflated with success, can sometimes bring us to problematic conclusions, at least temporarily. Pegasus, however, is a favourite of Zeus, and of course he's rather an innocent in this. He's the horse that Bellerophon's riding. So although he, in many versions of the myth, also dies in this, he then is immortalized, and he's placed in the northern hemisphere in the stars. We can still see him today in the constellation Pegasus. I talked about him also being connected to inspiration. The spring of Hippocrene, which rises from the mountains north of Athens on Mount Helicon, is known as the spring of the Muses. If you drink from those waters, your success in the arts, poetry, art, painting, acting, singing, is enhanced, according to Greek myth. Well, guess who creates this Hippocrene spring? Hippo meaning, of course, horse in Greek. It's Pegasus, pawing at the ground, looking for water, to dig up water in the dry season when he needs a drink. So Pegasus inspires us. Pegasus digs up inspiration. Pegasus helps us to find meaning. Pegasus brings the thunderbolt. Pegasus is power. Pegasus is passion. Pegasus is freedom. The winged horse, what could be more of a symbol of freedom than the winged horse? It's like our heart taking wing, isn't it? And we humans that come into contact with horses, all of us associate them automatically with freedom. What is freer than the horse? And what could be freer than the winged horse? So, to conclude, what can we draw from Pegasus? If we call upon the idea, the motif, the icon, the spirituality of Pegasus, we're going to draw strength. We're going to draw freedom. We're going to be inspired. We're going to find poetry in life. We're going to find water, the fundamental, most necessary thing on the planet for us, apart from air. And of course he represents air as well, because he's free flying in the firmament. He represents courage. He represents bravery. He represents all these things to us. I promised you that I would explain at the end of this video the possible connection with those earlier horse steppe cultures. Well, the winged horse in those cultures represents something that synthesizes all those ideas I just talked about in each human, and we call that, its name is the wind horse. I suspect that Pegasus comes from the wind horse of the steppes, through the contact with the Greek traders up in those southern Ukrainian Black Sea ports, and gets integrated into Greek mythology that way, because the Greeks are not mounted archers, as Bellerophon was, and the Greeks on the whole were not really horse people until they came into contact with the steppe herders and the Persians. So, in our following video, we are going to explore the concept of the wind horse, which takes these ideas of freedom, inspiration, strength, bravery, power to a whole new place. See you on the next one. If you found this in any way helpful, entertaining, informative, please give us those thumbs up. It helps the algorithm to help us to bring more of this content out there. you will see that there's a thank you button down below. Click on that. If you send us a few bucks, anything helps. It helps us create the time to create more of this content to bring to you. If you would like to explore our Helios Harmony horse training in the old classical style to be done with you and your horse, you see there's another little link down below for a free intro course. Click on that. And if you would like to come and work with us and our amazing horses in person, just shoot us an email on that website, longridehome.com, and we can make a plan. Okay, see you on the next one.